For the last 25 years of my life, I've worked in what you would call the creative industries. I've been a musician, I've worked in theatre, I've worked in radio, I've worked in television. But for the majority of my time, I worked in advertising, so I know what it's like to turn up for work and to have to wring ideas out of your head, to actually have to come up with concepts on demand, under pressure. And I can tell you it's not easy, especially when you're hungover. But one of the things that I've really loved is that feeling you get when you crack an idea, you know, when the hairs go up on the back of your neck, which is about the only place they're left to go up these days. And like some kind of cheap junkie, I've been chasing this fix. I've been wanting to come up with more ideas and better ideas. And as somebody who's never been allowed to keep monkeys and mice at home, I've had to experiment on myself. One time I tried extreme sleep deprivation. I stayed up for several days in some hope that a rainbow explosion of psychedelic thoughts might come to me. It didn't. All I got was a crushing headache, a weird twitch in my eye, and a sore jaw from the longest yawn I had ever done in my entire life. There was another time I thought that maybe, what if I break down the little patterned bits of thinking that I've got in my head? If I break down these patterned clumps, I might be able to free my mind up to go in directions it's never been before. So I'd get up in the morning, I'd try to get out of bed a different way. I'd sometimes get out the top of the covers, sometimes out the bottom of the covers, sometimes out the side, on my back, head first. I'd try and brush my teeth in a different order every day. I'd try and put my clothes on in a different order. And I succeeded in breaking down a lot of patterns in my head, and it was a nightmare. Because have you ever heard of decision fatigue? This is the theory that as you make decisions, you take a little bit of energy out of your brain until you're left with less mental capacity to make decisions. Well, I was exhausted by breakfast, and that left me with even less mental capacity and time, because everything was so conscious, to actually come up with decisions, to actually come up with creative ideas. So that didn't work. Move on. I teamed up a couple of years ago with the drum who I work with now, and I teamed up with them to see if alcohol can make you more creative. I know you're all sort of thinking what your own opinions of this. So we got 20 advertising creatives, and we took them to a laboratory, and we gave them 3 hours to work on the same brief. 10 of them were only allowed to drink water all night, and 10 of them had access to heaping buckets of booze. Things didn't go quite as smoothly as you would hope. These guys here, we actually had to send home 2 of the alcohol team within an hour when we found them asleep in a corner. Not ideal. We had a mutiny with the sober team as well halfway through when they insisted that they wanted a beer, but that would have ruined the experiment, so we didn't allow it. But we seemed to get some kind of results from it, and the results indicate that alcohol can in fact make you more creative. But it can, in fact, also make you less employable. So we decided that we weren't going to sort of push that forward. And so kept experimenting, and I've got to say that eventually I succeeded. And what I'm sharing with you today is the results of some of these experiments. And these learnings, I'm going to announce a product. If you want to come up with more ideas, maybe you need a nudge. The nudge is guaranteed to give you more ideas and better ideas. And I say guaranteed, it will actually work. It is foolproof. The nudge is intuitive to use. It works instantly. And it pairs beautifully with any smartphone. Let me demonstrate. And it also works with paving slabs. As you can see, I've now been effectively removed from the harmful effects of technology that could be holding me back from having great creative ideas. And the great news is that from day one, this product is compatible with all smartphones running all operating systems. Android, Apple, Windows, whatever the heck that is. Now, the nudge fulfills a customer need, like all good products do. More and more companies are looking for creativity and innovation. There's never been a more important time for you to actually be able to come up with ideas in your job. And that's what this can help with. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a technology hater. I'm really not. I actually have a company that teaches people how to code, so I'm not a technology hater. But we use technology wrong. And the nudge is about trying to put that right. I'd like to take you through some points to show you some of the benefits of the nudge here. So if you're trying to solve a problem, you really need to get your mind around it. You really need to think deeply. There's a beautiful expression for this that I love. It's about wrapping the tentacles of your mind around the problem. And that's when you're getting to know the edges of it. You're getting to know the possibilities, the opportunities, the bits that can move, the bits that don't move, the bits you can add to. And as you do that, it takes time for you to do that. And then you end up with little pieces of information in your head. And you end up with some strands of things that might become ideas. And just when you're, mentioned curly cheese fry, loving the talk so far. Could do with more kittens. Hashtag TEDxKittens. Is that even a thing? TEDxKittens? I don't know. So, where was I? You've got bits of information in your head, and you've got these loose strands. And Kitty Lover 739, curly cheese fries, right? Kittens would make the film of your talk go viral. Really, internet? This is still a thing? Kittens? Honestly? Clearly it is. Well, let's come back to that later on. You can disturb me later on. Let's get on with the talk. So you've got bits of information in your head, and you've got these loose strands that you can put into ideas, and it takes time to get your mind around this. And every single time you're interrupted, you resurface. And when you resurface, you lose little bits of information, and you lose some of these strands. And we are living in a constant interruption society with emails, with text messages, with Twitter messages, everything that's coming through. As each time we're interrupted, we lose a little bit more. So we're ending up with a shallowness of thought rather than a depth of thought. And that, to me, is a bit of a concern. Because one of the things that's happening with technology is that we're creating new pieces of technology that actually can interrupt us more and more effectively. And naturally, that can be fixed by the nudge. So the brain is like a muscle. It develops according to how you use it. So there's been studies done by London cabbies who have done the knowledge, and what they found is they end up with a larger hippocampus than the average person. People who learn languages end up with a larger cerebral cortex. And you would think that from all the knowledge that we have gained as humanity throughout the years, all the things we've learned, all the developments we've had, all the culture we've created, that our brains would have grown. But you'd be wrong. Our brains have been shrinking for the last 10,000 years. Our brains are at the smallest they've ever been in 10,000 years. And that's because the theory is that if you don't use it, you lose it. There were certain things that we needed 10,000 years ago when we were living out in the plains, and we're having to run from predators, we're having to forage for food, we're having to look after our families in really unhygienic conditions. And as we don't need to do that anymore, these parts of our brains have diminished. So if that's what happens when you don't use parts of your brain, what happens about the fact that we're outsourcing more and more of our thinking, more and more of our decisions, more and more of our memories to devices? Are we going to lose these parts of our brain? Because that concerns me. Because these are the parts of the brain that are absolutely vital for creativity and for coming up with great ideas. So instead of being constantly connected to the internet for everything that we do, maybe we need to take more time apart, to be separated, to have a break from technology, because this stuff is just not helping us. When you're looking at a problem, you're trying to solve a problem, what do you do first? Well, you do some research. Where do you do your research? Well, you go to your favorite search engine. Of course you go to your favorite search engine. You do it, I do it, everyone else does it. And that means that when you're looking for something online, you're ending up with pretty much the same information that everyone else is getting who's trying to solve the problem. And the brain is nothing more than a processor. Input, process, output. It's really important what you put into it. And if you're putting the same stuff into your head as everyone else is putting into their heads, then you can't actually come up with ideas that they can't come up with themselves. And the thing that makes it even worse is that search engines actually help us, apparently, by not just giving us the answers, they suggest the questions. So as you start typing, There you go. So as you start typing, you get the stuff that everyone is searching for. And that means that the search engine is in fact narrowing down the information that you're getting because it's leading you in these certain directions. And what makes it worse is the offices are actually designed in such a way that you've got your desk, you've got a big screen, you've got a keyboard, you've got a mouse, you've got a collection of little oval stickers you've peeled off apples and put in the bottom of the monitor to try and personalize it. I know you do it. Don't pretend you don't. And then you sit at your desk and you think that to be effective at work, you need to sit at your desk and use your computer. Computers are for doing. They're not for thinking. Creativity is about thinking. And that means you should really be separating yourself from computers as much as possible to use your brains. So maybe these windows aren't the best windows to see the world through. That fixed it. Now, the nudge doesn't just help you gain information, it also helps you retain information. You see, this thing here, by removing you from this, let me tell you about an experiment that was done at Columbia and Harvard in 2011. Researchers thought that they wanted to see what would happen when people were given certain pieces of information and asked to use computers. So they were given a bunch of phrases, and they were asked if they could type them into a computer to prepare for a memory test they were going to have later on. So they type the phrase in, and they get a little message saying, "Input saved." Brilliant. That's what you want, isn't it? That's what you want. So they type another phrase in, "Input deleted." Oh, no. Now, what they found is when they did the memory test later on, people were more inclined to remember the stuff that had been deleted than the stuff that it said was saved. So they ran the experiment again. This time, people would input a phrase, and it'd say, "Input deleted." Oh, man. And they'd input a phrase, and it'd say, "Input saved," and then give a very specific folder. So later on, when they ran this experiment to see how people would remember these phrases, again, people remembering the stuff that had been deleted. But when it came to the stuff that had been saved, they were more inclined to remember the folder it was saved in rather than what had been saved itself, the phrase. Now, this is called the Google effect. It's a cognitive bias. You can look it up online. It's an interesting thing that they did. But what it seems to indicate is that if we think something is stored on a computer or on an internet, then we don't bother retaining that information ourselves. And if we're not retaining that information ourselves, it is not valid input for our brains to process, because it's not in our brains when it comes time for us to come up with ideas. So, it's good to get out into the real world. It's good for us to be able to use our brains as much as possible. And one of the great things, I don't know how many people here are sort of retro technology users. I just wanted to say that actually, the nudge is actually back compatible with feature phones. So you can just imagine that if you're using one of these old devices, it's not a special touchscreen thing, you can still sort it with the nudge. It still has just the same effect. There's been a number of studies done, again, in recent years that have been looking at the effect of social media on happiness. And it seems to be there's a very strong correlation between social media and feeling really awful about yourself. The more you use it, the worse you feel. This is absolutely true. And this is terrible, terrible news for creativity. Because if you're feeling wretched, if you're feeling a bit sort of delicate in yourself, if you're feeling anxious, you're not going to give yourself the freedom to come up with daring ideas. You're not going to give yourself the freedom to come up with stuff that other people might object to, that other people might not understand, that other people might not like. And that is a terrible thing, because creativity requires a boldness and a confidence to be able to come up with ideas and then to be able to share these ideas with people. There have been more studies done that look at the optimal state for coming up with creative ideas, and the optimal state is happiness. You feel good about yourself. You feel calm. You feel self-assured. You feel secure in a safe place. You are better at coming up with ideas. There is a flip side to that. If you feel a bit crap, you're actually better at judgment. You're better at judging things if you're feeling a bit irritated. So what I would recommend is that you wean yourself off social media when you're coming up with ideas, then get in a quick fix before you judge them. That might actually help. So hopefully I've showed you the incredible personal tool that this is, because the wonderful thing is it can always help with any device that you can access social media on. It works perfectly. I mean, it's compatible with everything. Oh man, I've always wanted to do that. So hopefully I've showed you how the nudge can actually help you personally with your own creativity. But could you imagine what could happen if more and more people used a device like this? That more and more people separated themselves from technology so that they could actually concentrate on coming up with great creative ideas. Imagine what that would do for your job, for your school, for your university, for any organization you're in. Which is why I'm absolutely delighted to say that from day one, we also have the enterprise version. Thank you very much for listening, and remember that if you need a great creative idea, maybe all you need is a nudge. Thank you very much.